This is a Purple Line Express.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Frank Dyer. I am the Business Development Associate here at BuzziSpace Chicago.
Move a neighborhood and create inclusivity through entrepreneurship.
We've been around for about 15 years, around in the U.S. for around 10.
This is
So welcome to the Wyzendale Weekly Wrap-Up, where we talk about architecture, design, and everything in between. I have two extremely important guests that I'm super excited to have. So go ahead, you guys can introduce yourself.
I am Cecilia Cuff, one of the owners of Bronzeville Winery and founder of the Nason Group, and we're happy to be here with you today.
Hey, I'm Eric Williams, a co-owner of Bronzeville Winery and the SilverRoom and SilverRoom Block Party and some other stuff.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, obviously I've been a fan of you guys for a long time, for sure, and we did our team dinner at the Bronzeville Winery. I want to give a shout out to Bianca. She was our waitress, and did
shout
a
out
great
Bianca.
time, for sure.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good. It was
better
really
say
good.
it's good, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, it was good. You guys even did the logo on the menus and stuff. Nice
That was
personal
Cecilia,
touch.
yeah.
So yeah. So tell us a little bit
it
about.
was a dope logo, so we it was a good way to incorporate that.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us a little bit more about Bronzeville Winery.
Oh, man, we opened up 420, actually, which is kind of funny.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Man, it was a project that I thought about because I lived in Bronzeville at the time. I moved to Hyde Park now.
Okay.
But just meeting so many friends of mine who lived in Bronzeville.
Yeah.
And I'd been in the store had been in the north side. The SilverRoom had been on the north side for 17 years rather. Mm-hmm. And moving south, I just had this realization that people on the south side just inherently think about, arts, culture, things, restaurants, hospitality as a north side thing. It's just something that becomes part of what you do. When you go out, you go to the north side.
Right.
When you want to go eat something nice, you go to the north side. When you want to go downtown, quote unquote,
Yeah.
And so moving south, I'm like, wait a minute, why are we going downtown for the things that we could actually do in our own neighborhoods? You know?
Yeah.
So when this space became available, I wanted to create a space that was something that you would go downtown to, but it reflects our culture and you can walk to it. So that was the idea behind it.
Nice. And then the hospitality is super important for sure, and that element. How did you guys, how long was that ramp up of building out the staff and all that?
I think it was long. I think we decided to open a restaurant during the height of COVID, and the planning process started in late 2020.
It was a couple of years.
Yeah, late 2020. So I was in northern New Mexico, and Eric came down. We did some hot springs, and were able to relax for a little bit and really kind of start to conceptualize what that looked like. And I think from there, we had time to be able to think through all the different things. What is it going to mean to our community? How do we name the space so that it's reflective of the type of environment that we're trying to project? Mm-hmm. And then, also, how do we use some of those things that hospitality is really good at, like providing, financial stability for teams, providing growth for those in the community, and really be able to build out the programming that in not a hasty way. Yeah. So I think part of that, putting the team together, it really happened over the course of, I would say, 2 years. And then as, the pandemic progressed, being able to source equipment also became a thorn in our side. So, I think that probably extended the project another 6 months, honestly. And we wound up actually sourcing a lot of our equipment from other restaurants that had closed down during the pandemic, unfortunately. But, for us, that at least helped to alleviate some of those issues. But, I think every single thing in the space is curated, from the people who work there, who come from the neighborhood, to the chairs, tables, the name, the fonts, even, the art on the walls.
Yeah.
It was all really curated to kind of be very circular and very reflective of, of our community voice.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to Future Firm. I know that they were the AOR and design team. And so did you guys run that design process while doing the staffing, or can you talk a little bit about the process and how that was?
The process was a collaboration from the very beginning. Yeah. So Ann and Craig from Future Firm, they redid SilverRoom because of the pandemic. Actually, because of the pandemic, if not for that, it probably wouldn't have happened, because I was going to redo the store the year before, but you have to close for a month. You can't close for a month. I can't afford that, you know?
Yeah.
So when the pandemic hit, I had asked Ann probably 6 months beforehand about doing something. And so I'm like, it's going to take a week. She's like, nah, it's going to take longer than a week. It's going to take a lot. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this is tear us out,
Stow some stuff, and then, yeah.
And so when the pandemic hit, she actually hit me up, and she's like, hey, look, you closed, right? Because we had to close for 3 months. She's like, well, what about doing it now? I'm like, you know what? You're right. Let's do it now. So shout out to Ann and Craig, Future Firm.
Yeah, awesome.
And then we did that super quick. I mean, we did it probably in 3 3-4 weeks maybe.
Gotcha.
And with a super tight budget, and I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah,
and I just
it's
really
nice,
enjoyed working
for
with
sure.
them, and just the care and the concern and the detail. And so when this restaurant came up, I'm like, I got another project. Let's do this one,
Absolutely.
And so that was it.
Yeah, the relationship is so important. Relationship building and working with people that you have a good collaboration or good working relationship with is super important for sure.
And I think we had gotten to see some of the other projects that they had done also, in addition to the SilverRoom. And I think also the way that Anne, particularly, is able to really connect with community felt like something that off the bat was really important. She cares about the community. She cares about locally sourcing. And those are all things that I think resonated really well with us. So when we came and said, hey, we want to have Future Firm, but at the same time, we want to have Norman Teague do our chairs and tables and some of the woodwork, she was able to really incorporate that and really pivot pretty quickly to be able to incorporate some of those local aspects that we thought were really important as design aspects for the space. So.
For sure. And when you talk about like hospitality, cities, and obviously I'm curious about the New Mexico, how you guys retreated down to New Mexico, but what other cities do you really like and areas that when you think about hospitality?
I think I from Chicago, and this will always be my city. And I think I can't say I forgot for a second, but sometimes you fall in love with travel, because I find so much inspiration. I know Eric does too, which is why I often urge him to travel, often. And so I think both of us find inspiration in travel because there are so many cultural influences that really dictate design, both in the United States and then, Europe and Africa and, South America. Just, I think we're so lucky to be able to travel, to be able to see some of those influences, because I think you forget when you get stuck in these little microcosms. But, I think my first restaurant is in northern New Mexico in a place called Taos. So I designed a ski resort and helped to design a ski resort, everything from like 8 restaurants all over the mountain. And how do you get to a restaurant that you only can ski or snowboard to, or, that has a Bavarian influence, or, and then a hotel and condos. And so that for me felt great. And so that's why, coercing Eric into come there, because everybody goes to New Mexico and they go to Santa Fe. They fly into Albuquerque, but they never go to Taos. And I will say Taos is like the hidden gem. People from Taos don't ever want to say that because it's exposing our secret, but really, really beautiful indigenous culture. The Taos Pueblo people who have been there since the beginning of time. It's actually the longest inhabited indigenous culture in North America.
Wow.
And so a lot of the design aspects come from there of being very true to like earth, air, water. And so my first restaurant out there was important. So for my friends, I always try to share that with them, especially I think it was the first time Eric was coming from his block party that had like 50,000 people that showed up.
Yeah.
And so it's important to disconnect because you don't have cell phone reception. You don't have anything. You just have the stars and you have the sky, and you really are forced to listen to yourself. And so for me, that's where I find a lot of solace. And so I think from that, Eric and I kind of connected about the project. And I think I didn't know how involved I was going to be in the beginning. But I've been really blessed to be able to take some of those things here, like how to locally source. When we got here, I knew I wanted to find farms we could work with. Urban produce on the west side, incredible. Alicia and her team over there did a great job of helping us to source things we could put on our menu, to outfit the outside of the dining room and the outside of the restaurant that has this gorgeous, gorgeous gardens. I think the best outdoor patio on the south side, honestly.
Yeah.
So I think it's some of those things I was able to bring here. And, I think that dictated a lot of the design as well.
Nice. And really quick, I just want to take a moment to shout out Frank and BuzziSpace for hosting us in the showroom for today. Stay tuned for later at the end of the episode to talk Frank's going to tell us a little bit more about the products that you see and seen. And Eric, you were just talking about traveling in Montreal. You just hot off the plane, rolling into the podcast. How was that?
I travel, do these little talks, man. But the thing that's always influenced me, we talked about this a little earlier, was always music.
Yeah.
And fashion. I have a retail store. So when I get off a plane, I usually try and find the spots with the dope retail stores. I opened my store up in 97.
And that was on Milwaukee, right?
Milwaukee,
yeah. I remember I moved here in 2003, 2004, and I remember going to SilverRoom on Milwaukee and buying my first chain in there. Man, for sure.
Yeah, I was there for 17 years. But, just the fashion thing for me has always been like what's inspired me. And music, And Colette in Paris is a place I always look to that was like one of my influences. They opened up the same year we opened up.
Oh, okay, wow.
But, I had like 1/90th of the money they had to open their store up, But I was like, it was very aspirational. I'm like, oh, okay, this is how I look at space.
Yeah.
It's not just like the jewelry. It's not just like, the music. It's everything. It's the design. It's the art. It's the flow of traffic. It's the people that come. It's the smells, everything.
Yeah.
So it's been a big influence. So when I look at the retail, I look at hospitality it's very similar in many ways. The pacing is a little bit different, but music can set a tone, color can set a tone.
Yeah.
It all sets a tone. So for me, is when you walk into a space, you should feel a certain way. It's hard to kind of explain it to people, but when you walk into the SilverRoom, you should feel a certain something.
Yeah.
You walk into Bronzeville Winery, the biggest compliment is, man, it feels good in here.
Yeah.
Like you don't always even know why. It's everything. It's like the little things on the wall. It's the people you hire. It's the music. It's the smell. It's everything. So that to me is the design when it translates from an aesthetic that's a visual thing to a feeling.
Yeah. And I want to give another shout out to Thirst and the guys over there, Bud and his business partner. I forgot his name. Rick
Valicenti and Nick.
So they worked on the Black Party graphics for you guys, I believe, too. And
Thirst did our new logo for SilverRoom. It's Thirst.
Yeah, the new branding is from SilverRoom is from Thirst. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those guys are great too.
Yeah,
and
fantastic.
You guys really are just obviously like trendsetters, culture setters of what people are experiencing. The music for the Black Party is obviously the first year on the beach, I believe. Is that correct? And how was that? I think we went there on Sunday, I believe.
It was
great.
horrible weather.
Yeah, I mean, it was horrible weather, but it was great it was a great as a whole, I think, because you guys had an art influence as well. You guys had obviously the whole thing. I saw Derek holding court, talking people about wine. We saw Andre Power. Like it was definitely all there. Unfortunately, the weather, was not there. But yeah.
Yeah, no. It's the Block Party became this thing I started on the north side. And I really started because I would meet people in the store from different areas of art who didn't know one another. That was actually the real reason why. So I would meet, you, architect, designer, and I had another friend who would come in and buy sunglasses who was a dancer. And I'm like, man, this person, they don't know one another, and then I meet somebody who was maybe a singer and somebody who worked in another aspect of arts. I started realizing that the store would bring different people, but those folks didn't know one another. So I'm like, well, how can I bring these people together? Let me host this event that can have different components of our community in the same space, and hopefully they'll bump into one another.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind the diversity of it, was really to bring people together. So it's the same thing to this day. Like the music is very different. We have dance, we have video, we have a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
But it grew from 50 people to 50,000 people.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But yeah, it was a lot of challenges in many ways, but a learning curve. But I'm excited about doing it again this year.
Very cool. And when we talk about programming, Cece, like how important is that with the space too, right? Like programming and knowing exactly what's happening in the space, like that is a whole nother effort in addition to designing the space, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think being dialed in is I would say that I tend to be over dialed in, but being dialed into the space, being dialed in the community, and I think we spent a lot of time making sure we were dialed into what the community needed. So we use a lot of mentorship. I think being able to talk to people who have experience in the restaurant industry, not only on the South Side, I would say a huge shout out to Eric Williams from Virtue, not this Eric Williams, but the owner and chef of Virtue and many other restaurants in the city. He's been kind of our Charlie's Angels since the beginning, because at any given time, no matter what time of day it is, if I'm having a crisis, I can call him and he's able to give me that mentorship or give us that mentorship to help us to get through any problem, because he's seen it before. He's, a veteran in the game, but still coming up with these really beautiful and amazing concepts. So, we were able to say, how do you navigate the restaurant space systemically from on the South Side? And then, Boca Group has also stepped in a lot to be able to just give us some of those, statistical facts that help us to understand how to navigate the restaurant climate through the city. So I think we had to first think about who our user was and who's going to be coming here and who those audiences are. I think when you design any space, you walk through the door and you, as that person, whether they are, a child or whether they're, somebody on a date or somebody, a family who's lived in the neighborhood for 50 years who isn't necessarily excited to see their neighborhood changing, making sure that everyone feels included and like the space has been designed for them was a really important part of it. So that goes from everywhere, from everything from like the font on the menu to, you know, the accessibility of the restrooms and, you know, the being able to take pictures if, you know, you're a TikToker and, you know, you want to be able to take pictures in the restroom. So we're very conscious about that in every design aspect of the space. So
yeah, you know, and sorry, I was thinking about when you were talking. When I think about like a space and how it's designed, I would say I would want it to be about 60% finished. And what I mean by that is I might have an idea in my head of how it should look and feel, but most importantly, who the space is for, right? Mm-hmm. And I can only start with myself. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, this is the kind of space that I would want to see, how it looks, how it feels, the kind of music, all the stuff that I would want it to have in the space, right?
Right.
But you can only really know what the space is going to be until the people actually populate the space. Mm-hmm. And you don't always know who those people are going to be, you know?
Right.
So I feel like you have to give it time to breathe.
Yeah.
You know, and that takes time. You know, I think about the store, it's been 25 years now. I would say it took me a good 3 to 7 years to really know, okay, this is what this space is about. For us, it's been 9 months. And I talked to Cecilia about this a lot. Like, okay, I'm starting to see what this space is, like how people think about it. It's a date night for some people on this night. It's a space to go and kind of talk to the bartender on this night. Mm-hmm. I want to hear music on this night. It's live music. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It takes a minute to kind of get that together. And I think when you do that organically, then you have longevity because you're not making it be anything.
Right.
You just open up a space and then it becomes that because people make it become what it is.
And we've changed throughout our time being open. You know, we closed for a week. You know, I think it was 4 months in. It was full blast. For the first 3 months, you couldn't get a reservation. For the first 4 months, you couldn't get a reservation. You couldn't get, the waits were an hour and a half. And that was great. And, you know, we're a 200 seat restaurant, max capacity. And it was a lot to start out the gates like that. Yeah. So we didn't have time to breathe, to observe because we were just being reactive. So after the first quarter, you know, we closed the restaurant for a week and we just regrouped. You know, I think that comes from back to Taos is like, sometimes you need quiet.
Yeah.
And you can't have quiet feeding 600 people a night, 500 people
So
a
you
night.
guys open, like soft open, and then you close, and then
No, we opened.
It was open.
We opened all summer. Yeah,
But
we were open through this whole summer, and then it was just, it was so busy.
Yeah, it was crazy because it was so much anticipation for the restaurant. Because people knew it was coming, coming.
Yeah.
And we talked about this too. I did not want to have like a grand opening.
Yeah.
Because it would have been even crazier.
Yeah. We didn't have a grand opening.
You know, it was difficulty finding staff, of course. Everyone was having staffing issues at the time. You know, COVID technically I guess is still here, but you know, COVID was kind of just starting to kind of die down a little bit. And it was spring. It was like the prime time to open. Mm-hmm. And people were so excited, which was great. But we opened, it was like, you know, too many people, if I'm honest. You know what I mean? We couldn't probably really serve them the way we would want to serve it.
Sure.
And so it was like we're just catching up, trying to find people. People are quitting, people are coming. It's like the summer hit. We're just like, it was crazy, you know? Yeah. So I feel like now it's starting to settle down. And I think in some ways the winter has been good. Yeah. We're still really busy, but it's like, okay, we can settle down a little bit. Let's regroup. Let's get the right staff in place. Let's get the right systems in place. Yeah. Now when we hit spring, we'll be, you know.
So we closed for a week. We retrained. We went back to the basics. We reorganized, as Eric was saying. You know, we listened to those cues of what guests were telling us. So rearranged kind of the way our table setup is, the way our dining room flows, and we still do that. You know. Yeah. But I think have to be reactive to what guests are saying, and so I think feedback has been a really, really big part of it. You know, I think part of the feedback era and the Yelp, things that go in with hospitality, it got such a bad rap. And I mean,
is Yelp still a thing? Sorry, not to cut you off.
I think nobody looks at Yelp though.
No, people do.
They look at Google and I think they look at Talk. They look at Google, they look at Talk. And so for us, that's what we look at. But I think the great thing about our community is, you know, and we wrote a really heartfelt message at the end of everybody's dining experience because we do want feedback. Mm-hmm. We don't want someone to leave. We're a baby restaurant, you know, amongst giants. And so we don't want people to leave and have a bad taste in their mouth after the first month. We want their feedback because that helps us to get better. So one thing, and shout out to the whole community, people are really, really willing to write feedback and to write detailed feedback about how we can get better. And we read every single one of those comments so that we can make sure that we're constantly getting better and training our staff. And we appreciate those. You know, I think Yelp is Yelp. It's a cop out, and I don't think anybody takes it. People who can't speak up and don't care about the livelihood of people's restaurants and those faces behind restaurants, those people that write on Yelp, those people that give 1 reviews. But if you know that we're growing as a restaurant and you care about the livelihood, especially on the South Side, you know, then you're going to take time to write that feedback, because that's going to make somebody else's stay better. And I think we appreciate all that feedback, which is great.
And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. And I think people give like really honest feedback, and sometimes it's like tough to see it. Like, yeah, you know what, they're right. Yeah, we could have done that better. Yeah, it did take a little bit long for that. So I mean, for the most part, it's like, okay, that's great, that's good. You should do that. Okay, you know, we try and get better at that
for sure.
know?
Yeah, and I mean, feedback's always good, and especially if it's coming from, you know, someone that you may not know or do know. Like, as long as they're taking time to like appreciate it and give you the feedback. I know a lot of people kind of give me feedback on this podcast and stuff like that. But when we were talking earlier, like, man, this is me just for the love of talking to these people and enjoying this part, right? And I guess, how do you guys stay hungry with like ideas and that sort of aspect?
I mean, ideas is, I have a million ideas.
Yeah.
That's the easy part, you know. Well, for me, it's about collaboration, you know. I mean, I can only do so much, you know. Like, I'm not skilled at a restaurant, you know.
Right.
That's not my skill. That's Cecilia's skill.
Right.
So, which is why I think we work really well together, you know. Like, I have an idea and she'll be able to execute it, you know. It's how you can bring other people into the mix. You know, I realized that early on, having the SilverRoom, even on the north side, it's a small space, but people want to be involved. They want to be able to hang their artwork. They want to be able to come play music. They want to be able to, you know, cook, whatever it is, you know. So you create this platform for other people. And so that's kind of where the fun comes in. Oh, I got this idea. My cousin, she does X, Y, and Z, you know.
Yeah.
And so it's a constant influx of people coming in who want to be a part of something. And when it's good, you can, you know, you'll find good people who want to be involved with it too.
Yeah. And how is your podcast and all that effort? Like, that's an effort too, right? Like, I'm sure that you, the host Mario, I'm sure he puts in a lot of effort for that as
randomly selected.
Yeah, go ahead. You can talk about it.
You know, I just started that because, again, like, giving voice to a community doesn't always have the right kind of platform for the voice.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's been 25 years in. We have, you know, whatever, 30,000 followers here, 30, you know, whatever it is. You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, again, I know people who are doing some really dope things. Let's elevate their voice. You know, our first guest on our podcast was actually Eric Williams.
Gotcha.
You know, of course, people know who he is, but some people don't know who he is.
Right.
And so maybe the person who is a DJ who plays hip hop music might not know Eric, but they might listen to it and be like, okay, this guy's doing some really good stuff. Also, what is the correlation between this hip hop DJ and somebody who's a chef? There's something in common that they might have. Their approach to art, their approach to whatever it is. So you can learn from anybody. Yeah. And so that's what the podcast, it's randomly selected. It's everybody. It's politicians, it's artists, it's activists, a little bit of everything. So again, these are the voice of our community.
Yeah. And I think they make they're all interconnected. Like, they make our community go. And I think that's something that's been really exciting to see about the restaurant is we have everything, you know, every type of person comes to the restaurant.
Yeah,
you know?
It's our community.
It is our community. And so I think part of that was, you know, funny to see was Samir, who is from the city of Chicago, the deputy mayor, came in, and he's really one of the instrumental people who made the restaurant happen.
Big advocate.
And it's a huge advocate. And he's also from our community. So he's from Bronzeville, and he believes in being able to bring these types of projects to the South and West sides through the Invest Southwest initiative. And so when he just had a child about a year ago, and so he hasn't been in this space. But when he came in and he saw the mix, it was like a great Saturday night, you know, and he never gets time off. He works, I think, 24 hours a day. And so when he came into the space, the way his eyes lit up and the way he was able to see everyone from his community, like the artists and, you know, other public elected officials hanging out.
Lieutenant Governor was there that night. Amanda Williams was there that night.
So to be able to see these people and say, hey, let me introduce you. He got to see this thing that he rallied so hard for, because we were at a stopping point in the beginning of the project. We couldn't find funding.
Yeah.
And so if we had an idea, we have huge business records, like combined probably 40 years of, you know, business experience as entrepreneurs. And banks didn't want to take a second look. And so it was really when we got to the groundbreaking, we said, hey, we need help, you know, and we had won the NOF grant, which was really great, to be able to get us started, but not until, you know, the city of Chicago and the mayor and Samir were kind of able to step up and say, hey, banks, put your money where your mouth is as far as initiatives in some of these minority communities did any of the banks start to pick up their phones when we sent them this 40-page business plan that we had created.
We're a TA for the NOF as well, and we did a gym on the south side. Shout out to Chicago Body Shop and Diana's on 79th. And it's definitely an effort, right? And it takes time, right, to get the funding and to get everything going. So it's a lot for sure.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have happened without Cecilia. That was, like, again, I had an idea, but it sounds great. Oh, city's gonna give you this money. They ain't gonna just give you the money.
Yeah, right.
Nope,
it's a lot of hoops you gotta jump through.
Sure.
So
you guys said that your podcast you guys did together and randomly selected was the most listened to in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously you guys have done these like tours or press tours like for a while. Like, what do you think that eventually evolves into? Like, do you guys continue the same talk track, or like how has it evolved since the restaurant keeps evolving?
You mean just our partnership?
Yeah, no, not your partnership. Just like when you guys talk about it.
Well, it's like I love Cecilia. That's like my favorite person. Besides my daughter, she's
I get number two. That's good.
I just love listening to her and the way her mind works, and she's such an inspiration for me. So even as a listener, she's talking about stuff. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
and just working with her, I kind of see how she works, and it's a great compliment because how she thinks about things and how she works is very different than how I do, but it works together. So it's been a great partnership.
And I feel the same way. I think I'm inspired every day by Eric and by you asked, how do you come up with new ideas? If Eric probably already came up with 5 new ideas during this conversation of things that he'll execute. And he just has all these teams and these pockets and people throughout the city that he's able to kind of activate. And so I think for me, it's an honor to be able to help bring some of these ideas to fruition. Because I think the common bond that we have is everything that we do is rooted in the good of our community.
Yeah.
I don't think, which is not probably a good thing for a business owner, money is never our motive for anything that we do. I think both of us have a very low threshold I think we could probably both live off of like $20 because we came from that time on Milwaukee Avenue, But I think both of us could safely like live off $20 for a week and be fine. And, I think that's something that separates us from most business owners and most business partners is that our motive is always going to be rooted in how does this affect others first, and how does this uplift others first, and even a lot of times before us to a fault. And so I think that's something that will always keep us grounded. And I think as we create these spaces, I don't think this is going to be the last space based on a lot of the conversations we've been having.
I hope not.
I think those conversations become, how do we take this model and how do we take being able to create this livelihood? How do we learn some of these lessons that we've learned from this project and apply it to things in the future? And then how can we help other people to be successful in thinking about how to uplift community through job creation, how to create interconnectedness through different mediums throughout communities. And then also from a city planning standpoint, Eric talks about this a lot in urban planning, is how do you move a neighborhood and create inclusivity through entrepreneurship. So I think that's where the direction goes.
Yeah.
And also too, it's fear. It's a lot of work. And we talk about this a lot too. Creating a space, even in Bronzeville, which is that's a solidly middle-class neighborhood, is very different than doing it down here, and, the north side or in West Loop, You're going to have, these skeptics who like, wait a minute, even just to hire people. Well, why would I go work on Cottage Grove? I can work on Fulton.
Right.
So you're competing against that off the top,
Yeah.
And so you're competing against people who would say, why would I go to Cottage Grove? Was it 40 what and what? I can go to Randolph Street.
Right.
So you have this thing. It's a perception.
Yeah.
But once you create the perception and create the reality of it, it's like, oh, no, this is dope. I think that's what happened after about 4 or 5 months. Like, okay, this is the place to be now.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's being a trailblazer. People don't want to take that risk.
Agreed.
Because it is a risk in many ways. Okay, how's it going to work? This is an empty lot.
Oh, yeah.
It's a dollar store.
That's what the bank said. They were like,
how's it going to work?
You're opening a restaurant where? And we were able to look at the statistics and say there's more concentrated black wealth in the Bronzeville community and the surrounding communities than there is in the entire city of Chicago combined. Yeah. So whatever you're thinking and whatever you've seen on the news, you need to fact check that. And that's where people need to do their due diligence.
Well, because they haven't seen it also, and honestly, this space could work a lot of places on the south side.
Right.
It could work pretty much any neighborhood. Because if you live in Chatham or Inglewood or South Shore, you got a little bit of money, you want to go out, you going downtown. So it doesn't matter where you live at, you know.
Yeah.
So my thought process is there enough people live in Inglewood, enough people live in South Shore who can now stay in their own neighborhood?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Woodlawn, Inglewood, like everything with the Obama Center coming in, like people have been having their eyes on that whole strip there on 63rd, I think it is. Like it's definitely has its time coming for sure. Are the James Beard Awards, are those still some things that you guys strive for? Is that a pay-to-play sort of situation? Or like, I don't know if that's touched here now. I'm just curious. Because there's also like a local restaurant award. I forgot the name. I think it's a woman's name or something. La Blanche Awards or something like that, which is something too. But yeah, the James Beard, is that still like a thing that people strive for?
I will say that we put out a entry, aka challenge to James Beard award committee, that we need to do better in the way that we're choosing best restaurant. And that was our plea to them, was I think best restaurant means more than just the food that you're serving to your guests. It's more than just a great wine list. It's better than just great cocktails. And we have all those things, and great service. You know, we have all those things at Bronzeville Winery inherently, and that makes us, that's the base.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what is best restaurant is what's best for the ecosystem and what's best for the community. So, you know, where do you source your items from? What percentage of your beer, wine, liquor is female or minority owned? You know, when you created everything in the restaurant, it's difficult to a restaurant for less than $1 million. How many of those dollars did you spend in your own community? And so being able to challenge restaurants and creating a new norm for what best is it was kind of our challenge. And I mean, that's what our application said. And, you know, we also, you know, how do you create future and upward mobility for your staff and your team? Those are all things that we did as a business model, and that comes from my background in hospitality. You know, I'm not interested in running a restaurant that's not going to help service staff, whether it's with financial wellness workshops or access to mental health and wellness opportunities, or even just sitting down and having those conversations with us and being able to have the access to say, I'd like to open my own restaurant one day. And instead of pigeonholing your leadership team into being there for 15 years because it feels safe, help them. What are their dreams and what are their aspirations? What do they want to help to create livelihood for their own lives? So, you know, for us, we did apply for James Beard Award. You know, I don't know what their ratings or their standards are, but those are things that we think that the ratings or standards should include. But for a long time, I don't think it was pay to play, but it was probably a boys club or a club of people who, you know, knew each other and they got the nods. But I think I have seen a change in the way that James Beard kind of is moving in the past few years, and that's really helpful. You know, 100% started after George Floyd. But I think they're seeing how they can integrate more, because they've got a lot of really great initiatives, scholarship programs, and so I feel really hopeful about that. But you know, even if we don't win a James Beard Award for best new restaurant, but
I mean, I think that transparency in the dollar, I think, is what you're talking about, and that is paramount, right? So I guess even for me, you know, we're a small team, been open 3 years, like even seeing where all the students come from and the demographic of the students, like that's stuff that I'm interested in too, and being transparent with the community or the design community at large. So I guess like when you share that information, like I think I would be interested in seeing what you just said about you know, the wines that you selected or the food or where it comes from. I guess how do you incorporate that into like your marketing messages as well, like your social media throughout, right? Because is that like a full effort? And again, I'm just kind of workshopping with you here, but like, you know, how because that's important, right? Like I don't see Boca Group or Let Us Entertain You like providing those numbers, which I think would be interesting to see. But I also think that people would, you know, that you care where your money's spent, that they may not go to those if they found out that, you know, you're spending such and such money with such brand, you know what I mean? So it's difficult, right?
Yeah, and I think it's an ebb and flow. It's also value based. So if we could source everything locally from farms, we would, but it's 100% not possible. One, because of seasonality, but also, you know, it's just from a livelihood standpoint of the restaurant. But, you know, I think it's being able to have those little notes on the menu that say, you know, made Black owned or female owned or, you know, made in Chicago. So almost all of our beer, 60% of our beer and spirits list is either female or minority owned. So we designate that on our menu, you know, I think. And also, I think it's also the ecosystem of the people we work with. So in our marketing efforts, you know, there's often people who play at the space or who are performing at the space or who work at the space who are from the community. Most of our staff walks and most of our staff walks or rides a bike to work, or can commute relatively quickly. So I think it's some of those things is the people. A majority of people that come to our restaurant are from the community, and so we don't have to tell them because they already know. And then, and I think the people who come from outside of the community can feel it.
Gotcha.
And that's what makes it more interesting. You know, I think we've had a really great relationship with Choose Chicago. We went to DC with them. Eric was able to pair 4 songs with Derek, who did 4 wines. And so we were able to bring the Southside culture to DC and to say, and I don't think, we were talking about the New Yorkisms earlier and the Chicagoisms, but house music is a Chicagoism. And, you know, I think Eric can speak to that a little bit more, but we were able to kind of, I think it's something that you don't have to say, because you can feel it when you see it in the marketing efforts.
And I guess one fun question. Have you guys done the Grown Folk Stories? Have you guys gone up there?
So we did Grown Folk Stories twice.
I don't know. Have you guys individually done it?
Oh, have I done it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've done it a couple of times. But it's always so many people, I feel like, let them tell their stories.
I know, but
I was trying to get Cecilia actually to tell a story, but she was so busy because we actually did Grown Folk Stories outside of Bronzeville Winery.
Okay.
In the little courtyard, not little courtyard. Yeah. But, you know, I said, Cecilia's going to be a lot of people going to show up. She's like, okay. I'm like, no, it's going to be a lot of people going to be here.
I want to do one.
It was like 350 people came. Yeah. So it was crazy. We had this outdoor thing and everybody came into the restaurant. So she was too busy to tell the story.
Yeah, but you're going to get up there? If you get up there, I'll get up there too.
I'm not a public speaker.
Yes, she is.
I get so nervous.
She is the best public speaker. She's always like, I'm not. She completely is the best.
But I'm always behind like Lori Lightfoot, and then I choke because I get nervous. They've just made some, you know, profound statement, and I'm like, here's our restaurant. Right. And I know that what I do is important, but when I step up to a microphone, I don't know, I get nervous. But
E.F. Hutton, you remember E.F.? That's old school. It's before your time.
Before my time, yeah.
When E.F. Hutton, it's like when E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. Yes. So when Cecilia talks, people listen.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. No,
but we can tag team on one.
Yeah, we'll tag team. Right. I have a few good ones.
We'll have a glass of wine.
And I'm like, you know what? I need to do that.
We'll have a glass of wine first.
Promontory.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that's right. I saw that. It's the last Thursday of every month.
I moved it there. It's this Thursday.
Okay.
It was too many people.
This Thursday.
This is coming Thursday.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we might have to do it. You know, my girl and I actually have a date night on Thursday.
Come
we might
down.
have to do that.
That's a good date.
Yeah, for sure.
You can talk about the first time you met and win some brownie points.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
He's blushing. He's blushing.
I'm blushing for sure. Well, thank you guys so much for coming on. Like I appreciate it being so open to it and casual and open to these new ideas for sure. And super excited. I've been a little tired lately, but this has been a good rejuvenation of the fire for sure. Nice. The flame. And where can people follow you guys and individually as well as Bronzeville? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Bronzevillewinery.com is the best place to make reservations, to learn about all of the upcoming musicians that are going to be playing. Every Sunday night, we have live jazz. Every Sunday morning, we just started brunch.
Which is really good.
From 10 till 2. Make a reservation. That's been crazy. And then we're open every Wednesday through Sunday for dinner service from 4 until 11 on the weekends, 10 during the weeknights. But we do have a live DJ every day. So cool. Reservations are recommended. And then our Instagram is Bronzeville Winery, Facebook, Bronzeville Winery. I think we have a TikTok.
I don't know.
I don't.
And you can reach me at thesilverroom.com, at thesilverroom, Instagram, blah, blah, blah. Lots of
nice.
Stuff, so.
Nice. Well, thank you guys, and cheers to 2023, and hopefully having you guys back on in a year or so. So thanks.
I'd love to see you again, too, at the restaurant. Man.
Yeah, bring your team. Your team was lovely. We enjoyed all of them.
Nice.
Good.
We should do a podcast with him and find out about the influences of your team.
Exactly.
That was really interesting.
That would be great.
You had a really, really diverse group, which is cool to see.
Yeah,
so.
Thank you. Appreciate it. A lot of hard work putting it together for sure. So, all right, guys. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for checking out the podcast with Eric and Cece. Here to tell us a little bit more about what we see in scene is Frank. Go ahead, Frank. You can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. My name's Frank. I'm the local Chicago Business Development Associate for BuzziSpace.
Nice.
I've been working with BuzziSpace for a little over a year now. I started in October of 2021.
Cool.
So, yeah.
And where's BuzziSpace out of? Like some little company history.
Yeah, so we're a Belgian company, so we manufacture all of our product in Belgium. We've been around in the U.S., or we've been around for about 15 years, around in the U.S. for around 10, and we're growing. So we do a lot of acoustic office interior elements, as well as we'll get into a little bit about our acoustic lighting, and it's one of our fast-growing categories. So,
very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Cool. So, just tell us a little about what we see and seen here.
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we're an acoustic company, but that's not necessarily what we want people to know about us right away. Obviously, that's one of our pieces to our puzzle of BuzziSpace, but we do a lot more than that. So, in this little area, and in our showroom, we have what's called hubs for togetherness. So a lot of coming back to the office spaces, people need areas to connect again and to collaborate. So that's kind of what our showroom is showing right now. In this specific space, we've got a hubs for togetherness kind of pulled together by one of our new Buzzy rugs. A lot of people ask us about our rugs and are they more high performing or acoustic performing than other rugs? That's an example of a product that is kind of similar across the board. Ours isn't more special just because it's BuzziSpace.
Sure.
But for different products like our acoustic lighting, you can see above our head, that is a product where we really shine out. It's built with high-performing German acoustic foam on the interior, and then it's wrapped with our Buzzy fabric. So
very nice.
If you're able to come into our showroom and take a peek at it, you can feel it, squeeze it, and see how high absorbent it is.
Cool.
So that's some of our acoustic lighting. Behind me, we've got our wall covering Buzzy Skin. That's one of our most cost-effective of acoustic options. It can really go on any surface, any wall surface, office, residential, wherever you name it, just to add a little bit more to the wall. And that comes in our 12 standard colors, as well as some prints as well.
Okay.
And then lastly, a really unique product we have is called the Buzzy Mood, which you can see behind me in different sizes and shapes. So we wanted to bring a little bit of biophilia into the office, or wherever you're placing this. But this is a product. It's mummified moss. It is dead. It is not living. You don't have to water it. You don't have to take it out. But as the seasons change, the moss becomes harder and softer versus the moisture in the air. But this is a really beautiful piece that it's you don't have to do a lot with. It's not a heavy lift item, and we recommend you typically specify it in an area of not so much high traffic where people can kind of come in and rub up against it.
Yeah.
But certainly a unique piece as far as kind of wall acoustic tiles are concerned.
Great. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And I'm assuming different colors of the moss as well. You're
Absolutely.
saying?
So, we have a ton of Buzzy fabrics that are graded into our own products,
Okay.
as well as we have a graded in program with Kadrat. So, not only do we have access to all of our Buzzy felts fabrics, we've got different categories that you can use COM, specify your own product, or use another manufacturer's product.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Where can people follow you?
So BuzziSpace, we are online. BuzziSpace on Instagram. On LinkedIn, we show a lot of our newest products and share kind of webinars we're doing within the market. Myself specifically, I'm Buzzy Frank D on Instagram, where you can find me. I share a lot of inspiration images, installation images. I'm pretty networky, so I tend to go to a lot of events, so I'll share events there too. And then I work with DIFA Chicago as well. So I share a lot of information about DIFA and what we do kind of within the A&D community across the year. So
awesome. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you for hosting, Frank.
Of course.
I appreciate it. And,
pleasure to have you in.
I'm sure we'll be back.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a Purple Line Express. Doors closing.